Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where almost every week we come and we make you entertained for hours on end with our story ideas and our strange but oftentimes justified plot twists. I'm, of course, Levi,
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
and we're here to talk about a story. We just got done with our last previous series, The Coming Storm, I believe is what we called it. And now this is our slight recap / talk about episode where we talk about it and talk about our inspirations, talk about what we think about things like this, and generally just kind of, shoot the breeze for a couple of minutes. It's our time off. It's our relaxation. This is our vacation. This is my me time.
There you go.
So was there anything that stuck out to you specifically, Reed?
Well, just at the end of our last session, we were kind of talking about this is kind of a random tangential association kind of a thing. But I thought of the book 100% Lunar Boy. And
Yeah.
there were, the moon colony had been active for generations in this story. And there was a genetic mutation that was very rare, but only occurred in 100% lunar background.
Right.
And that was that an eye color thing. And if you had this, it was actually a fourth primary color. It was not
an extra cone.
It was like a color that nobody could describe. And if you looked into someone's eyes who were this color, your brain did not have sufficient capacity to process that color. It was receiving, like if you had blue eyes or brown eyes or green eyes or gray eyes or whatever, but your brain could not process that color, and you'd go crazy, you go nuts. So by law, people with this eye color had to wear like dark glasses, like filtered.
Right.
And they lived their lives that way, and you could not ever take them off in public because it was considered a crime, a violent crime, to expose someone to that, and we were talking at the end of the last story about some things that, the human mind just isn't it isn't equipped to process. So you kind of go crazy, right?
Yeah.
And that's just a completely tangential association. But that was the last thing I thought.
Yeah, it's one of these really cool things. One of these really cool tricks of storytelling that I really like, which H.P. Lovecraft does, which is when something's really terrible, he doesn't describe it.
Right.
He just says it is so terrible that to look on it is to know madness.
Right.
Right. He doesn't describe the horrors. He just says, "Oh my God, this is so terrible. You should be happy you didn't have to come down here. My brain is broke. My mind is broken. I can't perceive. I don't understand what I'm looking at."
Yeah.
Just draw the shape around the thing and allow your mind to kind of like try and fill it in.
Right.
Because your imagination is so much more powerful than a screen.
And it's a real common thing going back to like mythology, like Medusa, the one with the snakes. If you looked into her eyes, if you met her gaze, you lose your mind.
It turned to stone, right?
Yeah, and
the Sphinx too, wasn't it? Didn't the Sphinx also have something like that?
I think the Sphinx just had like a riddle because it had to do with like being a guardian of like a labyrinth or a passage.
Oh, okay.
That I think was like a metaphor of like wandering here and then being able to escape that to either some treasure or some other realm or the underworld or the overworld, whatever, something along those lines. But
so like in the last episode, I've been playing some like Open TTD, which is Open Tycoon Transportation Tycoon Deluxe. Seth and I have been playing that a little bit. And I've played world building games, and I've just been really obsessed. Not world building not like Age of Empires, but like city planning and building, where you're building the streets and planning where the trains are gonna go and the distribution of industry, and I've been really interested it's really interesting to see sort of modern city planning,
Mhm.
and then as they try to make games that replicate it, human behavior to an infinite degree, but there are no moral qualms about creating ultra efficient spaces
Yeah.
in video games because it like doesn't matter that people are dying at 38,
Yeah.
you know? But like and then you just I am no I love cars, but I'm not afraid of the sidewalks or the bicyclists.
Yeah.
I walk on sidewalks and I bicycle, you know. Um so I don't want it to come across as if I'm gonna mow the next bicyclist I see down. But like if you look at the efficiency rating of packing more and more people into a smaller and smaller space, things can get pretty ugly,
Yeah.
you know. Personally, I think we'd be the most successful at groups of like 15 to 20,000, spread throughout. So taking the incredibly dense populated places and just kind of spreading them out,
Okay.
And so
Into like little 15-minute cities of about 15,000 people
nope,
each.
I don't. No, I didn't say that. So that's why I considered this world that was being created to be dystopian, and I kept saying it like a meat. It's like a meat grinder. It's like a machine. It's like you know, if you make the seats in the subway cars uncomfortable, but the subway cars are the only way that people can get to work, people are gonna hate their life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you and there are just aspects of city planning that follow that same sort of idea more or less. And there's a lot of psychology and stuff that goes into like how much green is needed. How many plants does a human being need to see
Yeah.
it in their daily life in order to stay sane, you know? And it's like I think in like the 70s or something, New York didn't have that. New York City didn't have that,
Yeah.
you know? And so I I just really like this idea of this sort of floating metropolis
Mhm.
that looked beautiful and advanced, but in reality was sort of a carefully crafted engine.
Yeah. I was thinking like in the story, you had the three kind of shall we say metaphysical points of view, where you had
Right.
the spirit, the physical, and the kind of unknown all, and the unknown all aspect sort of uh, Seth mentioned would often lead to a nihilism, sort of like or I don't know if I'm pronouncing nihilism or nihilism.
It's nihilism.
I don't that notion that it tends toward a kind of a giving up, a kind of a just okay, whatever will be, and there's nothing, no meaning in it anyway, and where I kind of like one of our quartet members, I made the Corey character is like having been raised in that tradition, but just making that jump shift and saying, but there must be purpose. There must be. And yes, it's all directed by fate. But of course, that just means that I have a destiny, and there is a purpose to it all, and just assuming that there must be.
How um how likely do you think it was that Martin Luther was born?
Like was a real person.
No, 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 no. But that he was born. That he was born and developed and grew up the way he did. You know, I this is a thing I've thought about not correcting you, but bringing up with about your stories, Reed, which I think it's really interesting. And you can tell me if I'm totally off base here, which I'm happy to be off base if that's what it is. But it seems like you really like creating characters who are born into a certain mindset, but are free to think outside of it.
Yeah.
You know, the reality is people that say and think that they would be part of the Underground Railroad. that they would be hiding Jews
Yeah.
in Nazi Germany.
Right.
But like the reality is that 90% of the people don't and wouldn't,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. I thought about being like, come on, Reed, it's totally unrealistic that these people who are second in line to become heads of their temple would be so, but it's interesting. It's I don't know if it's like a personal belief or if it's just you believe in heroes, you know. I tend to get really cynical in my in the story elements I have and have a person sort of believe a certain thing and even to a fault they'll believe in that thing,
Yeah.
you know? Where I don't know, I think it's just our different ways of looking at the story, but
I had a university professor who joked about his favorite essay test question, and that was like pick a character, like Frederick the Great or Otto von Bismarck or
right.
Winston Churchill, and
Right.
say, did the man make the circumstances, or did the circumstances make the man? And then support your answer. And because he just loved getting people down that line that you just talked about.
Right.
And so and as you're writing your test, of course you're demonstrating a command of the information, which is the point of testing, right? You're learning this subject. These things happen, and this is how
Right.
we know that they happened, and this is where our information comes from. But these characters were players in this action, and um did they did their actions create the the circumstances, or did the circumstances they were born in create their character to rise up and fulfill this role? And
Right.
it's just a fascinating historical question as far as history. And I was kind of like, as you just pointed out, I would tend to uh, favor the man makes the circumstances kind of thing.
Yeah.
uh, it's interesting that the I used the expression, and then Seth picked it up just at the end of the last. What are we calling this? The gathering storm. Well, that was one of the when you read the big, huge Winston Churchill. One of the sections was, or volumes, however you read it, was the wilderness years. That's when he was the backbencher in the Baldwin and Chamberlain administrations. And just sighing because nobody sees the gathering storm. Nobody sees it coming. But he uses that expression, the gathering storm, about we have created ourselves a monster, and it's going to lead to war, and it's going to be horrible.
Right.
And yeah, it was just I think that in order for me to presume or to aspire to intellectual honesty, I have to recognize that I definitely have that bias. That is a definite thing that is, and it's interesting for me to think of, okay, what do I think about a situation, and
Right.
then try to imagine, well, what if my assumptions are wrong?
Yeah, I do feel like a couple of times my really clever ideas have been spoiled our next episode over when your story element comes in and like just neatly corrects and fixes all of the like difficult plot
Uh-huh.
points. It's
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
I created this really complex, like difficult plot system, and then Reed comes then the next one and says, "Here's this guy. He's the head of the army. He's super smart, super compassionate, full of empathy. He can see through this thing. He can do this." And you're sitting there like all of my issues are being dismantled in front of my mind.
Yeah, I remember one in particular, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way you do it, and so my goal is just to bring up new things, to sort of come against your ideas. And that's kind of one of the reasons sometimes I'll just be like, so you'll finish telling me your story element and I'll just be like, so what does that do? It's like,
Yeah.
I need you to do some filling in so that I can do some tearing down.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyways, Seth, do you have any constructive criticisms of Reader Eyes work so that I'm not just yelling at Reed?
Well, I think in the point that you just made, bringing out, Reed's bias to one, type of character that he brings up a lot. What you just said about it, taking care of a lot of the issues that you bring up to create story. And it could just be that the different not bias points, but where he's making a character that solves the issue where maybe you're looking for um action to solve an issue.
Right, absolutely. I'd say that's definitely true. I'm looking for the problem the problems that I'm presenting to be solved by the story, and way too easy, a Deus Ex Machina, a perfectly suited thing comes in. And I'm guilty of that as well, you know. If I have my cool ideas, I have my cool ideas. And I'm guilty of a lot, if I'm not guilty of Deus Ex Machining, then I'm guilty of taking over the entire story and just bending it to my own will. So, which I've definitely done at least once. I mean, how many episodes do we have? 224. I think I've probably done it to over 150 of them. But anyways, any other points of this story set that you liked? Any inspirations from any other books?
I guess part of my story element that I started out with the Pantheon, my big inspiration for that was looking up and seeing the chemtrail stuff happening,
Right.
whether or not people are into that or not. But I mean, if you look some of it up, I think from a non-conspiratorial standpoint, it's a real thing, rain seeding, and they
Yeah.
do it in like desert areas, and they pay big money for it. So whether or not you want to, look at it as them, controlling the weather, but that's kind of the way that I, kind of look up and okay, they're spraying this stuff up. It's changing, the atmospheric
Com-
stuff,
yeah.
which will then seed rain or seed stuff. And basically, like, okay, what if you split it down to, like the idea of, like magic being science is just they just didn't understand that. Well, what if, magic was magic and science was science? It was just two different ways to accomplish the same thing.
Right.
And so if you separated it out into, someone who would then use, the physical attributes around them to affect, something that someone might use spirit or something like that, to garner the same result.
Right. I kind of see now. I think that we move past that the reality of what you were saying. But that's really interesting. And I'm also sad that we didn't get to use the old man slash unique artifact more. I feel like
Yeah,
we kind of
yeah,
moved
that
past
was
that really
something we
quickly.
missed. Yep.
Yeah. I am too often there's a really good thing in episode 1, and then episode 2 it didn't get exactly
Yep.
remembered the right way, and then it just changes into something else.
Well, when you were bringing up the story element of fighting style, where the domination fighting style,
Yeah,
that would fit perfectly with that artifact if we went had
absolutely. Yeah.
woven it together. And it crossed my mind, but then we went on, and I missed the opportunity.
Yeah, there's like a lot of missed things like that. And that's why I'd like to I mean, here we are at the end of 2023 basically. I'd like to I want to try and do some short story writing this next year, and also challenge you, Reed, and you, Seth, to do some as well, just to take some of these ideas that we've written here, that we've clearly come up with good ideas. They're not all, they're not all bestsellers, Amazon bestsellers, but there are a couple of them that I think have some pretty interesting promise. So,
I of my own, I love a couple of one story that we had, and I really loved the twist, the where you had famous person Levi, and it was like a rock star, but
yeah,
I had history, and it was like ancient history about like literally Neolithic peoples that were traveling and peopled this place, and you wove it. It worked really well, but that is a story that has got a lot of promise.
absolutely. And then, yeah, I remember, and then it like ends up in sort of modern day, and there's intrigue and interest and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Another one that was like I was thinking of Mila 18 by Leon Uris. Leon Uris was famous for he wrote the book Exodus, that story about the people at post World War II, trying to pick up the pieces of their lives,
Right.
the Jewish refugees that were left homeless, and coming home, coming to the promised land. The whole, it was all the story about the Zionist movement after World War II, and how trying to create a homeland
Yeah.
in Judea, and or what's Palestine, what the British protectorate called it after World War One. And I think they had some, I don't remember, I know they were nominated for many Academy Awards that year. The movie, the soundtrack Exodus was, I think, got an Academy Award. Paul Newman played kind of the principal character, and he got acclaims. I think he was nominated but didn't win Best Actor. Anyway, it's a great book, and Leon Uris, that's his genre, is historical fiction, and putting fictional characters into an actual event that took place, and then getting the details of the history. He's very careful to get the history of the detail. But anyway, that's what most people recognize. Leon Uris. His first book was called Battle Cry, which was a story about him. It was kind of autobiographical. A young guy who dreams of being a journalist, after Pearl Harbor, enlists in the Marines, and he goes through boot camp, and they go through the invasion of Tarawa and Saipan and Iwo Jima, and all that, and it's just a great book. Anyway, one of the books that he wrote was Mila 18. Mila 18 was a number 18 Mila Street in Warsaw, which was the kind of the focal point address of the Jewish ghetto in Warsaw during World War II. And and how, the story of their survival, and how the Nazis would come, and with trucks, and they would load up laborers to take to different jobs or factories or whatever, and then bring them back. And then there came a point where they just decided, we've got to just exterminate them. So they just like leveled it, with artillery fire. And then they sent in the troopers, and they found out that they were, then they ended up fighting house to house in the basement, and they had knocked out the basement walls, and dug tunnels to the next building. So they had a network down at the basement level. And then they found out that they were below the basements, they had a network of tunnels in the sewer level. And it was like the fighting was hand to hand. It was brutal. And and the story was about this young journalist who just carefully um made recorded all the events, and listed the people and what they did and when they died, and what were the circumstances, and how the reduction
Yeah.
of the Warsaw ghetto
Yeah.
took place. And then finally at the end they realized that that it was coming to an end, and he had his manuscript wrapped in waterproof materials, and had to just like work his way through miles of sewers to get out. And he could hear behind them, they had set up positions, and they were fighting to the last man. And and you realize, the spoiler alert, by the way, just turn this off and like go read Mila 18. But the spoiler alert here. Well, he he realized that they were fighting to the last man to give him a chance to get the story out, right? And then you get through, and then it dawns on you that this really happened, that this was a story about real people and real events. And the reason we know about it is that they sold out everything and fought to the last man, woman, and child, that he would be able to get out with the story and tell it, and that it wouldn't die in the sewers beneath Warsaw.
I'm kind of lost. How is this connected to the story?
Well, we were talking about different ideas. There was one story I remember that we did where it was a kind of like a Holocaust kind of situation, where the war was going on, and the one teenage girl had hidden, and in the beginning scene, uh, the war she had been hiding under some metal roofing in the rubble, and she could hear the war, going back and forth, and finally, ebbing away. And then at dawn one morning, she peeked out and realized that, you know, it was just devastation around her, but she was behind the battle lines now, so she could make a break for it and go and get the story out. And that was just kind of a ripoff of that Mila 18. Anyways,
That's interesting. Yeah.
but that was one of our stories back that I was really want to go and revisit.
Yeah. It's so crazy. I'm just like scrolling through the list of them. I need to like go back and listen to all of them.
I know, because
Oh
we
my
did some
goodness.
really good stuff.
We did some really good stuff.
You had one story way back about remember the well?
The well?
That was one of the like within the first 10.
The
The well
well.
in the garden, yeah. I anyway, it just I'm sorry that all the details just escape my mind right now.
I got Retro Space Fork, the egg-shaped nanites, and the gardener, the ape, the bat, and the forget, Murder on Montana Ranch, Champions of the Mountain, the Great Lie in the Peach Grove, Top Hat of Destiny, classic, Power of Despair, Climate Change Crystals, and the Golden Hand versus Dr. Evil.
I think it might have been.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, that's gonna be kind of be my goal as we make these is to try and find one and sort of write a story. You know, we've been going now for what is this? First episode aired. Well, first episode was the file was exported on 5/8/2019. 5/28/2019, right? So that's a couple of years. And this is like a lot of time just not starting. I mean, just coming up with good ideas, but not following any of them through.
Yeah, most of ours were one-offs.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, and right.
I would say for anybody listening, let us know on Twitter or send an email
Absolutely.
at
Wait, wait, it gets better.
well, you know all the
Waititgetsbettercast at gmail.com or sending us a tweet at getsbettercast. But yeah. So unless anyone has any other cool ideas or anything about this last series we did, I think we're ready to wrap up. Anyone else have anything interesting they want to bring up about it? Oh, I know. Seth brought up the whole idea of it being out in the water.
Yeah.
And that made me think of BioShock. Seth, have you ever played the video games BioShock?
no, I think I'm taking a look right now.
Yeah. It's like
I do have them.
oh, yeah, you
So
should play them. BioShock is like this crazy sort of Ayn Rand concept where this guy builds a city under the ocean. They find this special material which allows them to make like special powers and basically the idea is come to this city and do your experiments and do your tests separated from ideas of petty morality. It's kind of a twist on the sort of Atlas Shrugged stuff. But it's really interesting because it's a lot of the same kind of themes that this guy, what's his name? The villain. I don't remember his name. Trey was espousing. Come to this beautiful new place and be successful and everything will be good and you can kind of skirt laws and anyways, it's really worth the game. It's not a book, but it's really worth a play through. Because it aside from the pretty good gameplay, it has some really good storytelling. So
Has anybody come up with a video game based on Jurassic Park?
what kind of video game?
I don't know.
I mean, I think I've got an old one for the Sega.
Yeah, they definitely did. But that's why I ask what kind of, because there's some games that are like park builders where you like I was talking about doing city builders where you make the park. There's some games where you're running away from dinosaurs.
Okay.
There's some games where you're shooting the dinosaurs. There's some games where you're the dinosaur. But yeah, Jurassic Park.
I think that's another one we've got. I forget what it's called. But it is. I think you can play some people, but a lot of them are dinosaurs, but it's like almost like a FPS, but
that's
it's
fun.
like all dinosaurs.
That's fun.
Kind of funny.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait, It Gets Better. If you would like to let us know if you want to talk to us. Best way to do it would be to send us a tweet on Twitter, private message, or just tweet us on Twitter at Waititgetsbettercast. Excuse me, at GetsBettercast is the tweet, or the Zeet, or the X, or whatever it's called. It's the Twitter one. Twitter.com is what it's. Just go to that. Waititgetsbettercast, or email us at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com. We will be back next week with a brand new episode of storytelling. No more of this just kind of rambling about our fun ideas. But this time we'll be rambling about our fun ideas with stories. Anyways, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.